So we will be discussing Alexander Chizhevsky. Please excuse the mispronunciation and the misspelling. Okay, I want to bring that up right away, but I don't want to distract from what we're going into. This is incredibly important information. He was an acclaimed scientist in Russia who studied the biological effects of the sun and universe, in particular how mass changes in human behavior correlated to sunspot cycles. He's known for the founding of heliobiology, and he entered the front lines of World War I in 1916. And it was there that he first discovered that battles tended to wax and wane with the strength of solar flares and geomagnetic storms. Now, you can find a Wikipedia page for more information on Alexander Chizhevsky. He constructed an index of, here's the term, mass human excitability, which traced the incidence of wars, revolutions, riots, expeditions, migrations from 500 BC to 1922 AD. And he found that 80% of the occurrences took place within a 5-year period surrounding the peak of the solar activity, which increased negative ionization in the air. This process is known as hysterectomy. So, of course, there was the energy blowback. There was the crackdown. There was the hammer that dropped on this individual. So a lot of people know about Tesla, but they may not know about Stalin locking him up in 1942, asking him to retract his writings on solar cycles, which contradicted Soviet theories of the reasons for the Russian revolutions. Basically, he had theories that went against the official story. So he was sent to the Gulag. We also see that it was followed by 8 years of Soviet rehabilitation in the coal mines, where he did scientific research. But then they put his face on a coin. Everything's all good now. And to this day, Google his name. Apologize for the typo in these 2013 slides. Chizhevsky. There is information about him in Russian that has not yet been translated into English. But to this day, they give medals in his name. In Russia, in Moscow, in the name of the sciences, specific to space weather. So we have Raymond Wheeler bringing this information out into the open. We're talking about the 1930s. People should ponder. Way back in the day, before the internet, there were certain periods in which there was increased interest in the solar sciences. Just certain periods in which there's breakthroughs in human intelligence where various scientists in different parts of the planet may be reaching some deeper level of awareness and knowledge. Now, I find this information really critical in light of where we're going and the return of the solar maximum. So we confirmed the pattern. He gave a ranking of 1 to 3 based on their severity. Found that intense magnetic upswings directly affected the human brain and at times drove mankind into deadly emotional tantrums and frenzied killing sprees. Now, note that analyze world climate, cultural activities all the way back to the dawn of recorded civilization. Some of these books I've never read. I would like to. But now enter Edward Dewey and his data statistically analyzed. We're talking about the data of Alexander Chizhevsky. Okay. And so Edward is the founder of the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. And he validated the existence of these war cycles. Here's what's interesting. What I want to highlight, it's the 4 components. I've noticed the cycles within my own life. Multiple cycles within one solar cycle. And so he describes the 4 components. 1, a 3-year period of minimum activity characterized by passivity and autocratic rule. Number 2, a 2-year period in which the masses begin to organize under new leaders in one theme. Number 3, a 3-year period of maximum excitability, revolution, and war. And number 4, a 3-year period of gradual decrease in excitability until the masses are apathetic. There's a formula there, may take some time, but where were you in the solar cycle? Now here's an example. We see here the different colors. We see blue, green, red, kind of a yellow, orange. These are the different cycles, 1/4 of the on average 11-year cycle, but it could be shorter or upwards of 13, 14 for a solar cycle. So this is just an average, and it's just there to convey. Now, we went through these slides pretty quickly. There's additional information you can find online over at solarmaxnews.com, but Dewey wrote in 1970 that knowing that wars have a cyclical nature related to the sunspot cycles implies that they have a common cause and therefore they are predictable. If so, then maybe they can be avoided. Now, that's a very important statement, but it's also important that you realize that the powers that be have probably stumbled upon this. In another video, we'll look at Carol Moore and some of the things that she wrote. But moving on to the 1960s, it wasn't just about the Beatles. It was also the rise of additional knowledge about the solar effect. Dr. Robert Becker and Dr. Friedman. 1963, they found that more people flip out at times of increased geomagnetism, that there was an increase in psychiatric hospital admissions. So this is actual hard data. We need to maximize this. We need current data. He passed on in 2008 with a warning to the world. So we look at the solar cycles here, the various solar cycles. The projection for solar cycle 25 on the lower right-hand part of the screen. So some projections are a little higher. I'm looking at different charts from different scientific sources. And so we're going to see an increase in speculation about the intensity, and it's important that people understand that the coming geopolitical tensions or outcome, because the tensions are already there. It follows the path of the sun. The powers that be know this. I'm going to be going deeper into that idea in an entirely separate video. This is focused specifically on giving credit to those individuals that came before me, that came before us, the people that are alive in 2019. We're looking at 100 years ago. Okay, and I'm going to go through this. The slides went through fairly quickly. So there's additional data other than the fact that he was locked up. Okay, I want to make sure that some of those things are communicated. So he's known as the founder of heliobiology. Okay, a lot of the stuff, again, 100 years ago, in 1915, he spent a summer observing the sun and first hypothesized the effect of periodic changes in solar activity on the organic world. Okay, he even traveled to New York City. He lectured on biophysics at Columbia University in New York City. In 1931, he set up the Central Research Laboratory for Ionization in the USSR. In 1939, he was the honorary president of the International Congress of Biophysics held in New York City. And I'm going to pause. There was someone that I guess put on a presentation, maybe even a documentary about Alexander Chizhevsky. It is not available on YouTube, but it looks like there was some sort of a private showing of a mini documentary about this man's life here in the United States. That is very, very interesting. I'd like to see that. So his work was supported for a while until he got basically the blowback. He hit some nerves with the powers that be in the Russian oligarchy. He proposed that geomagnetic storms resulting from the sun caused much more than electrical issues, epidemics, plane crashes, but also human life, mental, and physical. It's not so much blaming the sun, but noting that it was an important contributor and could trigger actions that had been building up from other causes. He proposed that human history is influenced by the 11-year peaks in sunspot activity. Chinese sunspot counts, just so you know, this is what was reported to have been used to go back 2,500 years, because sunspot counts apparently in the West only go back to the 1600s. Now, he suggested that more solar activity brought more change near solar maximum and made the people more excitable, more risk-taking, more aggressive, more outgoing. Less solar activity during the solar minimum brought calm, peace, more acceptance, and more introspective nature and thought or attitude. In other words, increased solar activity represented yang energy. And these are some of the thoughts also shared by Burl Payne, the yin and yang analogy. Intensifying emotions, either those perceived as negative or positive. And that's what I'm clarifying, that there's going to be differences in perceptions on the expression of emotions. Decreased solar activity can be seen as the yin energy, calming emotional response. So this is information that in today's day and age, I was at the library the other day, and you know what I'm always doing? I'm looking for books that talk about the sun. And sometimes when we're looking for knowledge, information, we find it. There's a synchronicity. It's like we're meant to find something and stumble upon that. So I've had those experiences, but I've gone into many, 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 many bookstores, always looking for key books about the sun or documentaries. And there's something about the collective consciousness that doesn't have the sun at the forefront of their consciousness. And in some cases, I'll see more things about other planets. And so I'm just noting this, while all aspects of our universe are interesting. Could there be another reason? Right, where the powers that be have removed certain levels of teaching from the public educational school system? I think that we need to think it through and find out what the individual solution is as far as educating ourselves about these causal factors. Now, going back to the dire warning about 2000, or when Becker passed on in 2008, a dire warning about the future. I feel like my role today in looking at the geopolitical tensions is highlighting the potential of X marking the spot as we cross the 2020 mark towards the next solar cycle peak of 2025. X may marks the spot. It may mark the spot. This is a warning to the world in 2019, drawing the correlation. If people can see certain things ahead of time and figure out there's a pattern, then maybe they can make the right decisions when these things come to fruition instead of panicking or making the wrong decision because they didn't prepare or think ahead about how some people may be responding in their own mental health crisis or breakdown. What's needed is a balancing out of the energies, using the surplus emotion, thought, strength, drive, and passion for the highest good, not acting on autopilot or reactively. What might be a mental breakdown to one could also be a breakthrough of years of programming and stuck images. The solar energy can help move through the stuck energies in the body, evolving us in the process. Okay, I will be back with more information. We've got a lot of videos planned that it will pretty much bring completion to this element of work, this greater body of research, specifically updating elements of my research on the sun over the course of the last month. I took about a month off YouTube in order to get this stuff done. But you can take a look at the slides for yourself if you're new. If this is the first video, there is basically a cliff notes to this concept available for all at otbtv.net, also at solarmaxnews.com.